The lady of the caravan was in the act of gathering her tea equipage together, preparatory to clearing the table, but noting the child's anxious manner, she hesitated and stopped. The child curtsied, thanked her for her information, and giving her hand to the old man, had already got some 50 yards or so away, when the lady of the caravan called to her to return. 'Come nearer, nearer still,' said she, beckoning to her to ascend the steps. 'Are you hungry, child?'
'Not very, but we are tired, and it is a long way.'
'Well, hungry or not, you'd better have some tea,' rejoined her new acquaintance. 'I suppose you're agreeable to that, old gentleman?' The grandfather humbly pulled off his hat and thanked her. The lady of the caravan then bade him come up the steps likewise, but the drum proving an inconvenient table for two, they descended again and sat upon the grass, where she handed down to them the tea tray, the bread and butter, the knuckle of ham, and in short everything of which she had partaken herself, except the bottle which she had already embraced an opportunity of slipping into her pocket. 'Set 'em out near the hind wheels, child. That's the best place,' said their friend, superintending the arrangements from above. 'Now, hand up the teapot for a little more hot water and a pinch of fresh tea, and then both of you eat and drink as much as you can, and don't spare anything. That's all I ask of you.' They might perhaps have carried out the lady's wish, if it had been less freely expressed, or even if it had not been expressed at all. But as this direction relieved them from any shadow of delicacy or uneasiness, they made a hearty meal, and enjoyed it to the utmost. While they were thus engaged, the lady of the caravan alighted on the earth, and with her hands clasped behind her, and her large bonnet trembling excessively, walked up and down in a measured tread and very stately manner, surveying the caravan from time to time with an air of calm delight, and deriving particular gratification from the red panels and the brass knocker. When she had taken this gentle exercise for some time, she sat down upon the steps and called 'George', whereupon a man in a carter's frock, who had been so shrouded in a hedge up to this time as to see everything that passed without being seen himself, parted the twigs that concealed him, and appeared in a sitting attitude, supporting on his legs a baking dish and a half-gallon stone bottle, and bearing in his right hand a knife, and in his left a fork. 'Yes, missus,' said George. 'How did you find the cold pie, George?' 'It warn't amiss, mum.' 'And the beer?' said the lady of the caravan, with an appearance of being more interested in this question than the last. 'Is it passable, George?' 'It's more flatterer than it might be,' George returned, 'but it an't so bad for all that.' To set the mind of his mistress at rest, he took a sip, amounting in quantity to a pint or thereabouts, from the stone bottle, and then smacked his lips, winked his eye, and nodded his head. No doubt with the same amiable desire, he immediately resumed his knife and fork, as a practical assurance that the beer had wrought no bad effect upon his appetite. The lady of the caravan looked on approvingly for some time, and then said, 'Have you nearly finished?' 'Wery nigh, mum.' And indeed, after scraping the dish all round with his knife, and carrying the choice brown morsels to his mouth, and after taking such a scientific pull at the stone bottle that, by degrees almost imperceptible to the sight, his head went further and further back, until he lay nearly at his full length upon the ground, this gentleman declared himself quite disengaged, and came forth from his retreat. 'I hope I haven't hurried you, George?' said his mistress, who appeared to have a great sympathy with his late pursuit. 'If you have,' returned the follower, wisely reserving himself for any favourable contingency that might occur, 'we must make up for it next time, that's all.' 'We are not a heavy load, George?' 'That's always what the ladies say,' replied the man, looking a long way round, as if he were appealing to nature in general against such monstrous propositions. 'If you see a woman a driving, you'll always perceive that she never will keep her whip still. The horse can't go fast enough for her. If cattle have got their proper load, you never can persuade a woman that they'll not bear something more. What is the cause of this here? Would these two travellers make much difference to the horses if we took them with us?' asked his mistress, offering no reply to the philosophical inquiry, and pointing to Nell and the old man, who were painfully preparing to resume their journey on foot. 'They'd make a difference in course,' said George doggedly. 'Would they make much difference?' repeated his mistress. 'They can't be very heavy.' 'The weight of the pair, mum,' said George, eyeing them with the look of a man who was calculating within half an ounce or so, 'would be a trifle under that of Oliver Cromwell.' Nell was very much surprised that the man should be so accurately acquainted with the weight of one whom she had read of in books as having lived considerably before their time, but speedily forgot the subject in the joy of hearing that they were to go forward in the caravan, for which she thanked its lady with unaffected earnestness. She helped with great readiness and alacrity to put away the tea things and other matters that were lying about, and, the horses being by that time harnessed, mounted into the vehicle, followed by her delighted grandfather. Their patroness then shut the door and sat herself down by her drum at an open window, and, the steps being struck by George and stowed under the carriage, away they went, with a great noise of flapping and creaking and straining, and the bright brass knocker, which nobody ever knocked at, knocking one perpetual double knock of its own accord, as they jolted heavily along. Chapter 27.